and the people imagine a vain thing. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations.
We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
When we are successful, and we will be.
Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. For there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before, of old, ordained to this condemnation.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Course Correction Radio, presenting 33.3 News right here on the CCR Podcast Network. I am so excited to be with you all, and maybe where you're listening, it's not evening. Maybe it is morning time, or maybe it is the afternoon. Maybe you're listening to this on your way home from work. If you're like me, I'm on the road a lot. Which I say in our Shake and Wake radio ad, I'm constantly on the road. I basically travel for a living. So maybe you're listening to this, but regardless, I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm so happy you guys could join me. And as you heard, and look, we had some strange music to start this. Yeah, we're going to be talking about conspiracy theory kind of stuff, tinfoil hats, one of my personal favorites. If you are a listener of the Dan Badandi Show, which we have a few select episodes right here on the CCR Podcast Network, and, we're going to be trying to upload some more if we can. That recently I went on with Dan and Brian a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about the alien agenda and really how it fits into the Bible. When you read the book of Revelation in chapter 16, it talks about 3 unclean spirits came out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the false prophet. And they were and they looked like frogs. Well, it's really interesting. I had the Kingstone comic Bible, and the way they depicted it actually looks like the little green men that were seen so often on the X-Files. And see, stuff like that is so fascinating to me. But today, even though we're going to legitimately talk about some real news and maybe some, not so real news about UFOs, we're going to be looking at a government report on them. But the main reason I want to do this is I think it's so important that no matter what you're studying, whether it's, the alien agenda or it's, anything related to the the medical issues that have been going on in the past few years, or the politics and elections, or anything like that, regardless of what you're listening or what you're looking into, I think it's so important that you realize, we all need to realize, and we all need a reminder of this sometimes, because we as humans can be so easily distracted. And that's really been on my heart lately, because I see so many things that people are, taking as fact, especially spiritual fact, that there's only, I wouldn't even say anecdotal evidence. Sometimes facts, just because they're so, especially when you're dealing with conspiracies, you're never going to know 100% fact. And I think that's important for all of us to talk about. However, you do see, not even anecdotal, you see coincidental evidence. That's a nice coincidence. Like, and I don't mean to pick on anybody here, but we did have a discussion in our live chat for the flagship show that we do on YouTube, our live show, which you should follow us at Course Correction TV on YouTube so you can see or interact with us live up there. We did a rebroadcast, and we got to talking about some words in the Greek that sound very similar. And honestly, these words actually, when you look at them, they sort of are related, but they mean two different things. One was the word for death, one was the word for immortal, which would literally, when you look at immortal, that means literally without death, right? You're not dying. So there is a connection there, but they're on polar opposite ends of the spectrum. It would be like a 1 and a negative 1, like mirror objects, right? That's fine. Those words are easy to confuse. That's why I say I don't want to pick on anybody, because I'm not here to do that. I do want to apologize, because I feel like maybe some of my comments that I made, it's so hard on text. I was just having conversation with one of them, but I went back and I looked at the message after I sent it, and it appeared a little condescending. So if you're listening to this and you were in that live chat, I apologize. That was not my intention. I was just, stuff like that interests me, when we talk about, are people devil worshipers or are they not? Ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because it's by default. I didn't mean that to be condescending. I meant that as, just shooting the breeze conversation. So if it came across that way, I do apologize, and I always want to set the record straight if I do anything to offend anybody like that. So anyway, this is what I want to get into when we talk about, especially when you talk about like words. I've seen people try to take the Greek letters of where it talks about 666, and they try to sound those out like they're Hebrew words and make it to like Jesus is the name of the beast. These people are idiots. Just gonna say it flat out. They don't have any spiritual insight. They don't have any intellectual insight, and really, quite frankly, they have no business teaching anybody anything, because they're defunct in the intelligence area, because even a cursory study of Greek will let you know that Greek has vowels. Hebrew doesn't. So you can kind of put three letters together, and that's how a lot of Hebrew root words especially work. They're just like, Bain. The word Bain means son, and it is literally, it's a bet and a nun in Hebrew, but they make the word Bain, or Ben is how we would say it in English. But Greek doesn't work like that. So if you were to say the word bar, which is the Aramaic equivalent, if you were to see that in the Greek, it would literally be, beta, alpha, and, ru, the Greek letter equivalent of R. You would see that. I think it's Rue. It's late, and I'll be honest, guys, I'm not feeling great tonight, so you're going to hear a couple of mental oofs tonight, so forgive me. And look, if you're listening, this might be uploaded to the YouTube channel, the full podcast, but part of this is going to be video anyway. So that's why I wanted to clarify what I said earlier. And look, that's why I put such a fuss on the words and stuff like that, is because even innocently, if we're telling people the wrong thing, that sends people down the wrong path. If we're not absolutely sure of what we're talking about, we're sending people down a wrong path. And especially if you're in a position of influence where people are listening to you and they're taking the instruction you give, that's a big responsibility. So, excuse me, guys. That's a huge responsibility. So I just want to address that, because you have guys like this guy that did this video where he said Jesus was the name of the beast, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I believe that legitimately almost everybody that will watch this video or listen to this podcast is probably aware of that. But there's so many people that bought into that nonsense, all because people don't understand the way the Greek language works. They hear somebody say it, they go down the wrong path. Which really brings me into what we're talking about here. So I just wanted to kind of give you guys a basis behind why I'm such a stickler with what words mean. Because words mean things, and as the people who claim to have the truth of God's word, we need to be more than anybody, especially in today's age where words are changing meanings and things like that. We need to be the staunchest on, standing for the fact that words mean things. So I want to read you this. This is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, and we're going to read a few verses, but I really want to zero in on verse 21. But this is what it says. We're going to start in verse 14. Now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, be patient toward all men. And that's why, that's my biggest problem, is I have absolutely no patience for nonsense. None whatsoever. And that's something I need to get better about, because that'll turn a lot of people that just maybe don't know better and they're saying things out of innocence, is being harsh with them. So I never want to do that. So if you feel like I'm doing that, please let me know, because that's never my intention. But like I said, I also will openly admit I have absolutely no patience when it comes to nonsense. So, but let's go on, because this is what it says. Rejoice evermore. Pray without ceasing. In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. Quench not the spirit. Despise not prophesying. Prove all things. Hold fast that which is good. Abstain from all appearance of evil. Well, how do you know what is evil and what looks evil? Is you test it through the Word of God, right? And that's why it's important to prove all things. And I want to look at that word in the Greek. That's the word dokimazo. Dokimazo. It's Strong's Greek 1381. And it literally comes from the word dokimos, which means approved or properly to test, to show something is acceptable, real, approved, put to the test to reveal what is good and genuine. And that's the root word, is dokimos. That's 1384. Now, dokimazo is to approve by testing. It is done to demonstrate what is good, i.e. passes the necessary test, does not focus on disproving something, i.e. to show it is bad, but really to take something. You're not doing this to disprove, you're doing it to prove. And in the process, see, it's kind of like the old idiom. Bank tellers are not taught to look at counterfeit bills. They're taught to study and prove the real bills, and they'll see the fake in the process. And it's the same thing. And I see a lot of people doing that. They just take things and they run with them. And that scares me, because I feel like it kind of reminds me of an episode of The X-Files that I watched, and I can't remember which one it was, but basically the syndicate, the evil clandestine organization that is helping the aliens with their colonization, they basically send Mulder and Scully on a wild goose chase, and at the end of the episode, if it hadn't have been, it very easily could have worked out to where if Mulder had pursued any farther, it would have completely discredited him, because they sent him on this goose chase, right? They sent him on a snipe hunt. And I think the same, like, call them the deep state, call them the Illuminati, call them whatever you want. I call them spiritual wickedness in high places, because that's what the Bible says they are. You know, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. We fight spiritual forces, and these spiritual forces, which I believe are masquerading as aliens, they will absolutely do whatever it takes to discredit you and to discredit me. And I think this is the key, is we have to, and look, this is why I love the King James. A lot of these Bibles, they just say test all things. Hold fast to that which is good, right? But that's not what the King James says. It says to prove all things, because it goes beyond just testing it. You are testing it for a purpose, to prove that it is, in fact, true and correct. So you're looking to prove these things are biblically true, right? Will we be able to do that with everything? No, I don't think we will. But it doesn't mean that we're not to stop, and we're not to set out to disprove things, because that's when we'll lead ourselves into error. But we have to diligently not just test it, prove it. We're talking the scientific method here. That I genuinely believe that. We're talking about, empirical data that we can deal with. And by the way, especially the morality part of the Bible, the spiritual part of it, it can be proved to individuals. I'm convinced of it because of the things I've seen. But that can't be necessarily proven to everybody, right? You know, the Bible talks about that. Even creation itself testifies that there is a God. So just everything around us, trees, sky, clouds, water, all of that proves it had to get here somehow. That proves that there was a creator, right? And it is the creator of the Bible. And this is where the morality part of it gets interesting to me, is because the morality can be empirically proven. Excuse me. So think about widows and orphans. James says that that is true religion, right? Is to tend to the widows and the orphans. The fact that there's laws in the Bible that do that talk about how widows can glean the fields and then they get food. From what I understand, and if you've ever been around a field, in a farm field, the ends can be quite troublesome sometimes. And, you typically, that part was left be number one because it was the first place that the widows and orphans could walk up on. But you left that for them. And then the poor were fed. The poor were taken care of. They had food, right? There wasn't any need for all of these programs and things like that if people would just do what the Bible says, right? These are things that can be empirically proven. You can go out and grow a garden, give the quarters to the less fortunate widows and orphans that are in your area, and then guess what? You're providing. You're helping the poor get what they need. Maybe you're not doing it on a grand, big scale, but that doesn't matter. If all of us would just do a little bit, that wouldn't be a problem, would it? And that can be empirically proven because you can go out and do it yourself if you have a field that you can, plant things in and till and cultivate and things like that. But look, it goes the same with, I think anything, if you are walking in the Spirit, can at least be given, it can go through this process. And if you look at the data, and we're going to be putting together an interesting I don't know if it's going to be a documentary or a series or what, but we're working on it in the background called Conspiracies Unmasked, the Alien Agenda. And what we want to do is just this. We want to prove that this agenda that we're going to talk about tonight is not, in fact, extraterrestrials as far as from other planets, but that we're dealing with spiritual entities masquerading under the guise of science fiction, which we have just been endowed with. And we're going to be looking at famous people such as Crowley, Tesla. We're going to be looking at the Nazis, all of this, because every single one of these have either some sort of New Age, mysticism, Satanism, or just an all around occultic tie to every single one of them. And I don't think that's a coincidence. So, but look, I wanted to get into this. Remember this, guys. No matter what it is, prove all things. Make sure that you can prove it with the scriptures. And I would say in certain circumstances, it needs to be beyond a shadow of a doubt. Not everything can be, though. So I get it. We're going to have disagreements on things, but just remember this. This is kind of the rule that I try to live by if I can, is if you cannot prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, don't be dogmatic about it. Because you very well could be wrong. And if you're dogmatic about something that somebody else can come along and they can give, circumstantial or anecdotal evidence for what they believe, and they can do it with the Bible and more importantly with the doctrine of Christ, what are you going to do then? We're not going to get everything right. But I think if we go through the doctrine of Christ, there's a lot that we can. Because look, Jesus said in John chapter 8, I believe it's verse 52 or 53, he says, and it might be 51, he says, "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, if a man keep my saying, he shall not see death," right? Ultimately, that's what comes first. But Jesus talked about these signs in the heavens and things like that. There's things that we can prove. I know people who can give anecdotal evidence for the rapture, the preacher rapture. But when you compare it to what Jesus says, he says, after the tribulation of those days will you see the Son of Man coming in his glory, right? So, well, that one doesn't work. But, when we get to talking about, there's things we'll never, ever be able to prove and we cannot be dogmatic on. And anything, in my opinion, that has to do with a gematria, which is numerology, a numerological approach to the number 666, you need to stay away from, because there is absolutely no way you can prove that. And Irenaeus said it the best. He talked about how that number is a symbolic number. It has absolutely, he even says you will never be able to guess this guy's name doing this. And there's other things. You can't just look at every number and say, oh, well, this equals 6, and this equals 6, and this equals 6, therefore evil, right? What if you're handing out flyers to someone? Are you going to skip number 666? Well, if you throw that one out, guess what? The next one becomes 666. You can't just skip it. And I'm not saying that anybody's doing that. I have seen that before, but that's not what I'm talking about. Basically, what I'm trying to say is this, is Irenaeus had the best example. He said that the 600 represents the apostasy before the flood because Noah was 600 years old when he was, when the flood came. And the 60 and the 6 represent the height and the width of Nebuchadnezzar's image that everybody but 3 people bowed down to. And that represents that apostasy, because you got to remember there were Israelites there too, right? But that represents that apostasy of that time of Babylon. And what Irenaeus said was that this number, 666, or 666, if you will, represented the culmination of 6,000 years of human apostasy in one man. Well, there's your 666 right there. So, in my opinion, if you can't show without a shadow of a doubt that anything that has to do with that number leads directly to apostasy, I wouldn't mess with it. That's just my opinion. Take that for whatever it's worth. I don't even know why I even went on that. I had absolutely no intention of even talking about that, but I mean, it's important. So take that for whatever you will, but that's just my advice there. So let's get into our first story. And by the way, this is an article. Believe it or not, I'm using a source that I have never used on this show before, just mainly because I don't believe that this is a worthy source, right? Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. For whatever reason, my thing went away. Huh, that's weird. All right, let me pull this back up. All right, this article is from the National Enquirer, so take that for whatever it's worth. This is basically a gossip magazine, but it was worth the $5 and change that I spent just because this story is interesting to me because there are at least parts of it that I've been able to vet, and there's parts of it that I just absolutely think are full of malarkey. But it talks about a U.S. spy boss revealing a chilling new encounters with warplanes. Now, I don't think this is true personally, but take a look. I'm not here to tell you what's true and what's not. I'm just here to report what's being said. So it says a terrifying new government report reveals a chilling increase in confrontations between UFOs and U.S. military pilots, leading experts to conclude America's defenses are being tested by extraterrestrials who have humans in their crosshairs. After years of silence, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence finally acknowledged last month it logged 510 close encounters between flyers and bizarre objects in the nation's airspace. Now, that's as far as I want to go with that because that's actually true. And look, this is the unclassified report right here. This is the executive summary that it says. It says, and this is from the Office of the National Director of Intelligence. I've got it pulled up right here. This is the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2022 from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. All right, so this is what it says. Unidentified aerial phenomena, also known as UAP. Reporting is increasing, enabling a greater awareness of the airspace and increased opportunity to resolve UAP events. In addition to the 144 UAP reports covered during the 17 years of UAP reporting included in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, or the ODNI preliminary assessment, there have been 247 new reports and another 119 that were either since discovered or were reported after the preliminary assessment's time period. This totals 510 UAP reports as of the 30th of August, 2022. Additional information is provided in the classified version of this report. Of course it is. AARO and ODNI assess that the observed increase in UAP reporting rate is partially due to a better understanding of the possible threats that UAP may represent, either as safety of flight hazards or as potential adversary collection platforms, and partially due to the reduced stigma surrounding UAP reporting. This increased reporting allows more opportunities to apply rigorous analysis and resolve events. The establishment of the Department of Defense, DoD, All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, that is the AARO, should facilitate more coordinated UAP efforts, resulting in greater attribution of UAP. I keep wanting to say UFO. While limited data on UAP continues to be a challenge, the establishment of AARO with its broad scope of authorities and responsibilities and its replacement of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, or the UAPTF, will allow for increased coordination of efforts against the UAP problem set. AARO's authorities ensure that UAP detection and identification efforts will span across DoD and relevant interagency partners, as well as the intelligence community, or IC. With the support and coordination of the National Intelligence Manager for Aviation, or the NIM Aviation, NIM Aviation's and AARO's coordination efforts will improve U.S. government awareness of objects in the airspace and resolution of UAP events. See Appendix B. Whoops, went too far down. UAP events continue to occur in restricted or sensitive airspace, highlighting possible concerns for safety or flight adversary collection activity. So basically what this is they're saying it's a potential national security issue with these unidentified things in the air, which actually makes sense. But I think it's interesting that basically what's happening is the unelected officials of the government are growing even bigger. Is that a coincidence? Personally, I don't think so, but take it for whatever it's worth to you. Look, I think this is the bottom line when we talk about this. So we've read 1 Thessalonians. Let's head to 2 Thessalonians real quick. All right. So this is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, which is, if you've been listening to Course Correction Radio for any length of time, especially if you've been listening since the beginning to old episodes, you'll know 2 Thessalonians 2 comes up a whole awful lot on these platforms because it is essential to understanding the end times. So listen to this. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as that day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was with you, I told you these things? And now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work, only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all powers and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. See, that's what I think. And look, this is interesting. So, deceivableness of unrighteousness, them that perish because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. So here's the thing. When you talk about the truth in the Bible, it's defined as two things. It's defined as the law of God in the Old Testament, but it's also defined as Jesus defines himself as the truth. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, and no man comes to the Father but by me. Right? And notice what this says, and for this cause God shall send them strong delusion that they should believe a lie. So here's the connotation. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with this strong delusion, it's literally whatever delusion. It's not just one thing. It can literally be any delusion that a person is drawn to. God's going to just turn them over to it. The book of Romans says they'll be turned over to reprobate minds, right? And it talks about some lawlessness and literally some anti-Bible characteristics when it talks about The men worked among themselves that which is unseemly. It says God turns them over to reprobate minds for this, and which literally, that word reprobate literally means worthless. Their mind won't be worth anything. And I think this could potentially be one of those delusions that people will fall for, is when some sort of entity appears and claims it's an extraterrestrial, and they're here to warn us about this big bad alien who's going to come. I think people will fall for it. So let's go over here to the book of Revelation, because I think this is key. Sorry, guys, I'm having an issue with my keyboard. I think it's in Revelation 16 as well. So Revelation 16 is the part that talked about the oh, no, I don't know what I'm thinking of. It's Revelation 20, I think. All right, so this is the chapter that talks about Satan being locked up for 1,000 years, right? Which, if you've been following me for any amount of time, I am of the belief that 1,000 years is symbolic and Satan is actually bound right now. Not that he's physically bound to where he can't interfere, but to where he can't interfere physically, like he did with people like Judas and how he appeared in person to Jesus. I don't think he's capable of that. I think he's locked out of this plane of existence, the dimension, call it whatever you want. But this is what it says. And when the 1,000 years were expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and he shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of saints about, and the beloved city, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. Now, if you back up to the chapter before this, and you go down to, where is it at? It's verse 11 of Revelation 19. And I saw in heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. Remember what Jesus said, after the tribulation of those days will you see the Son of Man coming in his glory, right? And look, I'm basing this off of anecdotal evidence. So take this for what it's worth. This is something we can't be dogmatic about, but if you understand how Gnostic inversions work and things like that, it's no secret that we are being inundated with movies where a powerful god-like alien, take somebody like Thanos or Darkseid from the DC and from Marvel and DC universes respectively, they come down and they just Thanos wants to snap half of people out of existence because overpopulation throughout the universe, right? In the comic books, it's a little different. He does it to woo Lady Death, like the goddess of death. But what I believe this is a Gnostic inversion. They want, when Jesus returns, this powerful God entity, because I won't even say God like Jesus is God, they're going to rally the world. I truly believe that they are going to say that it is an alien invasion, especially when you look at what the book of Jude says on the subject. The book of Jude says this. All right, let's go here. I don't know why it didn't just take me to the book of Jude. That was weird. All right. And here's what's so fascinating. This is so interesting to me. Because Jude is going to talk about the Lord's return here in verse 14 and 15. He says, and Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints. Now that's thousands, that's multitudes, and it's that same word used in the book of Revelation, to execute judgment upon all, and to convince them all that convince all that are ungodly among them of their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and all of their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Now, this is interesting because he says Enoch, the seventh from Adam, also prophesied, and then he goes on to quote almost verbatim the book of Enoch. And I find that highly fascinating because the oldest known copies of the book of Enoch, fragments, and there are some that say there's an entire scroll in Aramaic that hasn't been released to the public. I can't speak authoritatively to that because I haven't seen it. But what I do know is that the oldest known fragments are like 300 years before the birth of Christ. And here's the half-brother of Christ quoting this book, which, if you've read it, prophesies about Christ a lot. And it's also the book that talks about these people from the heavens, or the star people that people have called them. Ancient Aliens has tried to say these people were aliens. But these fallen angels come down, they mate with women, and they make these hybrids known as the Nephilim, right? That was all gone into detail in the book of Enoch. The book of the Testaments of the Patriarchs, and I believe it is in the Testament of Amram, Moses' father. It talks about these watchers, right? And that's what they were called in the book of Enoch, these watchers that came down and mated with the women, that they were viper-like. They were almost reptilian. That is so freaking fascinating to me because you can get into the half-breeds and the reptilian conspiracy theories from there. Look, like I said, you got to be able to test and prove these things. The fact that, we know the word seraphim is fiery serpents. It can also mean shining ones, granted. But, these fiery serpents, these reptilian-like beings, and then this is a second witness to that. Like, these are things that, there's some pretty good anecdotal evidence for. I would actually even argue that this is better than that because these are age-old texts, right? So, but look, and these reptilians, in theory, could be green, if depending on what kind they are. I mean, they could have those solid black eyes. I mean, that people have described these things very similar. There's people that have described insect-like creatures, reptilian-like creatures, frog-like creatures. I mean, this stuff is so fascinating when you get into it. But here's the thing. This is why we're talking about it. You have to be able to pull it from biblical sources, number one. And then to make a further point, you can go to extra biblical sources. But really, the Bible needs to be the foundation of truth for all of it. And look, this is what I think is going on with this alien agenda, and I'm hoping very soon we've got some new sound equipment coming in, and I hope to be starting to work on this stuff very soon, and we're going to release it right here on YouTube. Because we want to be able to, at least with the first one, we want everybody to be able to see it. But hopefully it'll be a blessing to you all. And it'll edify you guys, give you information that maybe you didn't know. So that's it for today's episode of 33.3 News. Once again, I'm your host, Trey Harris. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And hey, if you're listening maybe you're listening to this, audio sometimes gets uploaded to YouTube from our podcast page. If you're listening, leave a comment below. And if you're listening on the Spreaker app, you can also leave a comment. So we're looking forward to hearing from you guys. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe you think I'm off base here. Let me know what you think about the dangers of going down some of these rabbit holes, because some of this stuff can't be proven. And what are your thoughts on the fact that, are there entities out there that want to discredit us? Love to hear from you in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for your time. Have a wonderful evening. God bless. Shalom, and we will catch you next time right here on 33.3 News. Y'all take care.
Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations.
We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
When we are successful, and we will be.
Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. For there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before, of old, ordained to this condemnation.